I used to look at the Mondragon Corporation in Spain and wonder why we didn't have something similar here in the UK. It's a network of many different worker-owned businesses that have funded their own bank, their own university, and their own welfare system. Now, the idea of a cooperative or a worker co-op didn't actually originate in Spain. The core principles that many modern cooperatives use today were invented here in the UK nearly 200 years ago by the Rochdale pioneers. So when I heard about this small town in the Basque region of Spain that created this cooperative ecosystem that's generating billions of pounds every year and was able to fund all of these social activities, I was genuinely curious to know why we haven't been able to replicate something like that here in the UK. The assumption I was making is that if we didn't have our own UK version of Mondragon, then maybe it means that nobody's attempted to build anything at that scale. However, after visiting Co-op Congress this year, I don't think that's true anymore. Co-op Congress is a national conference bringing together people from across the UK and the international movement. It's the biggest event in the UK dedicated to cooperatives.
I'm excited about the fact that the government they've just announced here at Co-op Congress that we've got a new champion in government for cooperatives, and we are in the manifesto to double the size of the cooperative movement.
What stuck with me after the event wasn't necessarily a specific segment or a particular speaker, which kind of surprised me because before the event, I was very sure what topics I wanted to sit in on and what conversations I wanted to be a part of. But what was most interesting to me in the end was just the many different conversations happening between different people working on different projects in different sectors and in different parts of the movement.
It could be anyone from a large retailer to people who've bought out their community pods, save it from going under, people who set up a community organisation where they're supporting a local sports club, for example. We have people who are groups of architects coming together to support each other through kind of a challenging economy.
It's tempting to look at Mondragon and focus on the institutions, the welfare system, the university, the research centres, the federation. But those things weren't built all at once. They were created over time as people responded to the most urgent problems that they were facing. And before any institutions existed, there were conversations, there was trust, there was education, and they had existing relationships. They also had a shared understanding that certain problems couldn't be solved alone. One of the things I've been reflecting on recently is how easy it is to overlook certain forms of cooperation. We tend to recognize cooperation when we see shared assets, shared services, shared finance, and large federated networks. Those things are important, but cooperation doesn't always start there. Sometimes it starts with conversations. Sometimes it starts with sharing ideas. Sometimes it starts with sharing experiences. Sometimes it starts with just helping somebody avoid a mistake that you've already made. Recently, I talked about building a network, and at the time, I was trying to think of ways to transition from awareness into participation and for ways to support each other's projects. But what I've come to realize is that networks are often the result of existing relationships, not necessarily the starting point. The starting point is trust. The starting point is meaningful conversations between people trying to solve similar problems. In many ways, that's what I've been searching for since my study visit to Mondragon. Not necessarily a glossy platform or project or network, but more so the opportunity to continue those conversations with people who care about the same questions. Conversations around real projects, real experiences, and attempts to solve urgent problems, because usually that's where the most useful ideas are created. One of the things that Co-op Congress reinforced for me is that there's already a lot of cooperation happening here in the UK that I wasn't aware of. It just didn't look the way that I was expecting it to. Not every form of cooperation produces a profit sharing agreement or a cooperative bank or a welfare system. Sometimes it produces visibility, sometimes it's knowledge, sometimes it's new relationships. Sometimes it helps people discover opportunities that were already there. Sometimes it helps people solve problems that they would have struggled to solve alone. I think this also connects to something I've observed while studying cooperative history. And it's this principle that people don't usually cooperate because of ideology. They're usually trying to solve a problem. And those problems shape the kinds of institutions that they build. Mondragon emerged from a particular set of circumstances. The UK cooperative movement exists within a different set of circumstances. So instead of asking, why don't we have our own Mondragon? Perhaps a better question is, what problems are people trying to solve? And what forms of cooperation do those problems require? One of the things I come away with is a much greater appreciation for organisations like Cooperatives UK and the role that they play. Now, they do wear a lot of hats, but one of the core things that they do is help people to develop the knowledge and skills and relationships that are needed to build and sustain cooperative projects. A lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes, but it's such an important part of how a movement develops and sustains itself over time.
So people sort of have a vague idea that they need to have some sort of contract in place. They know they probably need some policies. They don't know what they look like. They don't know what to include, and they don't know where to go for more information. So they come to us and we help them to work all of that out, and we provide things to them to get them started.
Co-op Congress has given me something that I've been searching for since my trip to Mondragon, and that's access to real projects here in the UK, people who are solving problems unique to this part of the world, and also access to conversations that are really difficult to have over email or video or social media in general. And that's probably the most valuable part of the event. And it's something I'm going to build on in this next phase of Co-op Evolution.